The silence of deep space was not empty. It was heavy. It pressed against the hull of the salvage ship, the Wanderer, like a giant hand. Inside the ship, the air was cool and smelled slightly of ozone and recycled food. This was the smell of safety for most of the crew, but for the two humans sitting in the control room, it was just Tuesday. Alex sat in the captain's chair. He was tapping his fingers on the armrest. His nails were chewed down to the quick. Next to him, Tom was looking at a large screen filled with green dots and lines. Tom was bigger than Alex, with wide shoulders and arms that looked like they could bend steel. Right now, those arms were crossed over his chest, and his brow was furrowed in concentration. Are we there yet? A small voice squeaked from a chair near the floor. It was Sola. Sola was a member of the Lumen species. They were small, fragile beings with skin that glowed softly when they were happy or scared. Right now, Sola was glowing a faint yellow, which meant worry. Beside Sola sat Karg. Karg was a Kryler, a reptilian creature with scales that shimmered in the artificial light. Karg's eyes were narrow slits, and his long tongue flicked out to taste the air. "Patience, little ones," Alex said. He spun his chair around to face them. His voice was deep and calm. "The scanner says we are close to the coordinates. We just need to drift a little more. This sector is bad," Karg hissed. The universal translator turned his hissing words into flat, robotic speech. "The Orion Sector is a graveyard. My ancestors call it the place of broken stars. We should not be here. Money is good here," Tom said, without looking away from his screen. "And the Federation pays well for salvage." The Wanderer moved through the darkness. It was not a fast ship, but it was strong. It had to be strong to survive in the debris fields they often visited. Outside the thick windows, the darkness was suddenly broken by a glint of metal. Then another. Then a huge twisted piece of hull plating drifted by, silent and cold. They had arrived. The debris field was massive. It stretched for thousands of miles in every direction. It was the grave of an ancient battle. Ships of all sizes lay broken, their hulls ripped open by weapons that had not been used in centuries. "Scanning," Tom said. His hands flew across the keyboard, typing with a speed that always surprised the aliens. Humans had clumsy fingers, but they were fast. "Most of this is junk. Titanium alloy, common plastics, standard fusion cores. Nothing worth the fuel to drag it home." Sola let out a sad sigh, the light on their skin dimming to a dull gray. "We wasted our fuel?" "I didn't say that," Tom grinned. It was a sharp, toothy grin that made Sola shiver. Humans showed their teeth when they were happy, but to a prey species, it looked like a threat. "I said most of it is junk. Look at this." Tom pressed a button, and the main screen zoomed in on a shadow at the edge of the debris field. At first, it looked like a small moon. As the image cleared, it became obvious that it was a ship. It was colossal. It was miles long, shaped like a jagged dagger. Karg stood up abruptly, his claws scraping against the metal floor. "What is that?" "That," Alex said, leaning forward, "is our payday." But the aliens were not looking at the ship with greed. They were looking at it with terror. The ship was dark. Pockmarks covered its hull, scars from explosions and plasma fire. It floated in the void, dead and silent. But to the experienced eyes of the aliens, it was not just a ship. It was a tomb. "Readings are coming in," Tom said, his voice dropping an octave. "Atmosphere analysis." "This is weird." "Weird how?" Alex asked. "High oxygen content," Tom said. "Nitrogen, traces of carbon dioxide, and the gravity. Internal gravity is set to 1.2 standard Gs. That is heavy." Sola covered their mouth with tiny hands. 1.2? That would crush my bones. Even standing there would be painful. "The radiation levels," Karg added. looking at his own small screen. They are high. Not lethal immediately, but there are biological signatures. Traces of pathogens, bacteria, viruses, millions of them. Alex stood up and walked to the screen. He stared at the dark ship. Pathogens? You mean germs? Deathworld germs, Karg whispered. That ship is a Class-III Deathworld vessel. It comes from a planet that tries to kill you every second you breathe. High gravity, bad air, tiny monsters in the water. Nothing alive can survive in there for long. Except the people who built it, Tom said. He stood up and stretched, his back cracking loudly. Well, we aren't staying for a vacation. We go in, get the black box, and grab any tech that looks shiny. You are crazy, Karg said, backing away. I will not go. My species did not survive 3,000 years just to die on a rusted bucket from a death world. You don't have to go, Alex said. He looked at the alien crew members. Tom, Lisa, and Dan will go with me. You two stay here and keep the engines warm. Lisa was the ship's engineer. She was small for a human, with hair tied back in a tight bun and grease on her cheek. She walked into the room, carrying a heavy helmet. The airlock is ready, Captain. Suits are charged. Dan is already suiting up. He's excited. Dan was the youngest member of the crew. He was eager, perhaps too eager for a salvage job. Be careful, Alex, Sola said, the yellow light on their skin pulsing rapidly. If the environment does not kill you, the defenses might. Ancient warships often have automated security, drones, lasers. That's why we bring guns, Tom said, patting the holster on his hip. The humans gathered near the airlock. They put on their exosuits. These were heavy suits of armor, powered by electric muscles. They helped the humans carry the heavy equipment and protected them from the harsh environment. To the aliens, the suits looked clumsy and bulky, like metal gorillas as the airlock cycled, depressurizing the air. Sola and Karg went to the bridge to watch the cameras. They felt sick with worry. Humans were strange creatures. They were from Earth, a world that the Galactic Federation knew as a death world. It was a place where animals had sharp teeth, the weather changed violently, and diseases evolved quickly. Humans were tough, adaptable, and violent. But even they had limits. Opening outer door, Alex's voice crackled over the speaker. The video feed showed 4 dark figures stepping out into the vacuum of space. They were tethered to the ship by thick cables. Magnetic boots clanked against the hull of the Wanderer. Then, they activated their thrusters and flew toward the dark, jagged shape of the ancient ship. They look like insects, Karg muttered. Watching the screen, they look like brave fools, Sola corrected. The humans reached the hull of the derelict ship. It was huge, making them look like ants crawling on a sword. Tom found an access hatch. It was welded shut. I'm cutting it, Tom said over the comms. A stream of bright sparks shot out from his torch. In the silence of space, there was no sound, but the light was blinding. A few minutes later, the metal plate fell inward, disappearing into the darkness. Entry is made, Alex said. Going inside. The humans disappeared one by one into the hole. On the bridge of the Wanderer, Sola and Karg watched the biomonitors. The screens flashed red. Oxygen levels are 23%, Karg read, his voice shaking. That is highly flammable. One spark could burn the whole ship. And the gravity. It is crushing. How are they moving? Look at their heart rates, Sola pointed out. They are elevated. They are pumping adrenaline. Their bodies are flooding with energy. They are not scared. They are enjoying it. They are predators, Karg said. And they have just entered the predator's den. Inside the derelict ship, it was pitch black. The humans turned on their suit lights. Beams of white light cut through the gloom, illuminating a long, metallic corridor. The walls were covered in dust, but they could see scorch marks. There had been a fight here a long time ago. "Careful," Alex said. "Watch your step." The floor was covered in debris. Broken glass, shattered equipment, and things that looked like bones. Humanoid bones. "Check the air," Alex commanded. Lisa held out a scanner. "Air is breathable, but stale. Heavy CO2 pockets. Filters are holding. Temperature is near freezing. Gravity is heavy, but the suits are compensating. We can take the helmets off if we need to, but I wouldn't recommend it. The smell is probably awful." Dan laughed, the sound echoing slightly in his helmet. "Come on, it can't be that bad." "Don't jinx it, kid," Tom grumbled. They moved deeper into the ship. The gravity was pressing down on them. Even with the suits, every step was an effort. But the humans didn't complain. They breathed in rhythm, their muscles working hard. To them, the pressure felt like a heavy blanket, grounding them. They felt more awake, more alive. The alien crew watched the feeds, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. The ship was a tomb, a place of death and high energy. To the humans, it was just a Tuesday at the office. But they all knew that the easy part was over. They were inside the beast now. And the beast might not be sleeping. "Movement," Alex said suddenly, stopping dead. The other three froze. They aimed their weapons down the hallway. "What is it?" Lisa whispered. "Sensors?" "No," Alex said. "Gut feeling. This place, it feels like it's watching us." From the safety of the Wanderer, Sola wrapped their arms around themselves. The human concept of a gut feeling was not scientific. It was primal instinct. And if a human's instinct was telling them to be afraid, then the galaxy should be afraid too. The air inside the ancient ship was heavy, like walking underwater. Every step the four humans took required effort. The gravity here was intense, nearly T. Twice what they were used to on their home planet, but their powered suits hummed and whined, helping their muscles lift their legs. To the alien crew watching from the safety of the salvage ship, the environment looked like a crushing nightmare. To Alex, Tom, Lisa, and Dan, it was just a heavy workout. They moved down a long corridor that seemed to stretch on forever. The walls were made of a dark, gray metal that was cold to the touch. Every few feet, there were panels on the wall with strange symbols. Lisa stopped at one of them and wiped away a thick layer of gray dust with her gloved hand. "Can you read it?" Dan asked. He was young and eager, shining his flashlight into every dark corner like a tourist visiting a museum. Lisa shook her head. "It's an old code. Maybe a variation of standard military binary, but it's corrupted. Give me a minute to hack the interface." She pulled a tool from her belt and connected it to the panel. Small lights flickered on the screen. While she worked, Tom stood guard. He held a large rifle in both hands, sweeping the barrel back and forth, covering the front and the rear. "I don't like this," Tom said. His voice sounded rough over the radio. "It's too quiet. Where are the bodies?" "There are bones back at the airlock," Alex reminded him. He was at the front of the group, leading the way. "Maybe the crew died at their stations. Or maybe something dragged them away," Tom muttered. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed through the hallway. It came from behind them. Everyone spun around. The lights on their suits cut through the darkness, but the corridor was empty. "What was that?" Dan asked, his voice shaking a little. "Metal expanding and contracting," Alex said calmly. "This ship is dead. It's just cooling down. Keep moving." But back on the Wanderer, the alien crew was panicking. Sola stared at the radiation readings on the main screen. That sound, it had a frequency. It wasn't cooling metal. It was mechanical. Karg hissed, his tail twitching nervously. Automated defenses. I told you. Deathworlders always booby-trap their tombs. They are a paranoid species. Warn them, Sola said, pressing a hand against the screen. Tell Alex to be careful. The humans didn't hear the aliens' warnings. They were focused on the door at the end of the hallway. It was huge, made of reinforced blast doors, and it was shut tight. Lisa, can you open this? Alex asked. I'm trying, Lisa said, typing furiously on her wrist computer. The lock is fused. It's been welded from the inside. Welded from the inside? Dan asked. Why would they lock themselves in? To keep something out, Tom said grimly. Or to keep something in. Stand back, Alex commanded. The team stepped aside. Alex raised his rifle. He didn't fire bullets. He fired a plasma charge. A bright blue bolt of energy shot out and hit the door where the hinges were. Sparks flew everywhere, and the metal glowed red-hot. Smoke filled the corridor. Again, Alex said that he fired 3 more shots. The blast door groaned, a deep, terrible sound of screeching metal. Slowly, the door began to buckle. With a final deafening crash, the door fell inward, slamming onto the floor with a thud that shook the ground beneath their feet. Behind the door was not a room, but a massive chamber. It was the main cargo hold. It was enormous, stretching up so high that their flashlights couldn't find the ceiling. Huge crates and containers were stacked in haphazard piles, as if thrown around by a giant child. Wow, Dan whispered. Stay close, Alex warned. They walked into the cargo hold. Their footsteps echoed loudly. As they ventured deeper, red lights began to flicker on the ceiling. They were dim, but they cast long, scary shadows. A low hum started to vibrate through the floor plates. We tripped an alarm, Tom said, checking his scanner. We have company. From the shadows behind the cargo crates, small machines rolled out. They looked like metal spiders, each the size of a dog. They had multiple legs and a single red glowing eye in the center. They were drone security bots left behind to guard the ship. Take cover. Alex yelled. The drones opened fire. Lasers zipped through the air, burning the floor and walls. The humans moved fast. They didn't run away in fear. They moved with a purpose. Dan dove behind a large metal crate. Lisa rolled behind a stack of barrels. Tom and Alex stood their ground in the open. Tom fired his rifle. Bang, bang, bang. 3 drones exploded into pieces of scrap metal. But there were more coming. Dozens of them were pouring out of the dark corners of the room. Too many. Lisa shouted over the noise. I need to shut down the main grid. Do it, Alex replied. Tom, Dan, give her cover. Dan popped up from behind his crate and fired his weapon. He wasn't as accurate as Tom, but he was fast. He hit a drone that was trying to flank Lisa. Lisa was working on her computer, trying to find the override command for the security system. It's no use. The code is too complex. I need to get to the main terminal. It's on the other side of the room. It's on the other side of the room. That's a suicide run, Tom said, blasting another drone. I'll do it, Dan said. He stood up before anyone could stop him. Dan, get back down. Alex ordered. I'm fast, Captain. Watch this, Dan yelled. He didn't run in a straight line. He zigzagged, jumping over debris and sliding under crates. The drones tried to track him, but he was unpredictable. Lasers missed him by inches. One beam skimmed his shoulder pad, leaving a black scorch mark, but he didn't stop Dob back on the Wanderer. Sola was covering their eyes. He's going to die. The chance of survival is less than 10%. Look, Karg said, pointing at the screen. Dan reached the far wall. There was a large console with a flashing red light. He pulled out a data cable and jammed it into the port. Come on, he muttered to himself. A drone climbed up the wall behind him, aiming its weapon right at Dan's head. "Dan! Behind you!" Tom screamed over the radio. Dan didn't turn around. He trusted his team. He typed one last command and hit enter. Access granted. A loud siren blared, and then suddenly, the red lights on the drones turned off. They froze in place, their weapons lowering. The humming stopped. The room went silent, except for the heavy breathing of the humans over the comms. "Yes!" Dan shouted, punching the air. "I did it." "Good work, kid," Tom said, lowering his rifle. "But don't ever do something that's stupid again." Alex walked over to Dan and checked his shoulder. "You're burned." "You okay?" "Just a scratch," Dan said, grinning inside his helmet. "It hurts, but I'm alive." The aliens on the ship were stunned. They watched the replay of Dan's run. They calculated the speed, the reaction time, the G-forces he endured when he slid under the crate. "They are insane," Karg whispered. "No logical being would take that risk." "It wasn't just risk," Sola said, watching Alex help patch Dan's suit. "It was trust. They knew the others would protect him." "That is a dangerous evolutionary trait," Karg said. "But effective?" The humans gathered in the center of the room. The cargo hold was secure now. "Lisa, where to now?" Alex asked. Lisa looked at her map. "The main bridge is on the upper deck. We need to take the central elevator, but the power is out in that sector." "So we take the stairs," Tom said. "How many floors?" "About 50, Lisa said. Tom groaned. "I hate stairs." "At least the gravity is high," Dan joked. "Great for the glutes." Alex shook his head, but he was smiling slightly. "Let's move. We aren't here for a workout. We are here for the log." They found a heavy door leading to a stairwell. It was a vertical shaft that went up into the darkness. There was a ladder attached to the wall. "Ladies first?" Tom joked. "Age before beauty," Lisa replied. Alex grabbed the ladder and started to climb. The metal was cold and slick. As they climbed, the atmosphere changed. The air grew colder. The silence felt heavier. They were climbing toward the brain of the ship. The ship had tried to kill them with drones, and they had survived. But Alex had a feeling that the drones were just the beginning. This ship held a secret, a reason why it was sealed so tight. And they were getting closer to finding out what it was. He looked down below him. Tom, Lisa, and Dan were following, climbing steadily. They were tired, bruised, and scared, but they kept going. That was what humans did. They kept going until they couldn't anymore. "Hold up," Alex whispered. He stopped on the ladder. He shined his light up. About 20 feet above them, the hatch to the next level was open. But something was blocking it. It looked like a cocoon. A sticky gray substance was plastered over the opening. "What is that?" Lisa asked from below. "I don't know," Alex said. "But I think we found out why the crew welded the doors." He pulled his knife from his belt. It was a simple metal knife, but it was sharp. He poked the gray substance. It was hard, like stone. "Tom," Alex said, "bring up the scanner. I think we have a biological situation." "Biological?" Tom asked. "Like a virus?" "Or worse," Alex said. "Like something that grew." The humans hung there on the ladder in the dark, suspended in the middle of a dead ship, staring at a mystery that was centuries old. The easy part was definitely over. Now, they were entering the unknown. The gray substance blocked the hatch like a hard stone plug. It looked organic, like a giant wasp nest made of cement and ash. Alex poked it again with his knife, and a small flake crumbled off, drifting down into the dark shaft below. Tom shone his scanner beam directly onto the blockage. "Carbon-based," Tom said, his voice tight. "But the proteins are twisted. They don't match any known animal or plant. It's like scar tissue." Massive scar tissue. Scar tissue? Lisa asked from lower down on the ladder. You mean the ship healed itself? Or something tried to seal it up, Dan say. ID, his voice echoing slightly. Alex looked at the obstacle. It was thick. Cutting through it would take too long, and the noise might attract unwanted attention. He looked for another way. To the left of the hatch, a metal panel had been blown off the wall, exposing the inner workings of the ship. We go through the wall, Alex decided. Tom, give me a hand with this panel. Tom climbed up next to him. Together, they pulled the remaining metal sheet away. It screeched loudly, the sound grinding through the silence. Behind the panel was a narrow maintenance tunnel. It was cramped, filled with pipes and wires, but it looked clear of the gray stone. After you, Alex said to Tom. Tom squeezed his large frame into the hole. I hate tight spaces. If I get stuck, you guys leave me behind. No pushing. We won't leave you, Lisa said. But we might laugh. Tom grunted and pulled himself deeper into the ship. One by one, the team followed, abandoning the ladder for the dark guts of the vessel. They crawled on their hands and knees, the suits scraping against the metal pipes. The air here was stale and smelled like old dust and dry chemicals. After 10 minutes of uncomfortable crawling, they reached a grate. Tom looked through it and nodded. This looks like the bridge corridor. He kicked the grate out. It clattered onto the floor on the other side. They tumbled out of the vent, standing up and stretching their limbs. They were stiff and tired, but they were close now. The corridor leading to the bridge was different from the rest of the ship. It wasn't just metal. There were marks of desperation everywhere. The walls were riddled with bullet holes. Scorch marks from explosives blackened the ceiling. Empty weapons casings littered the floor, crunching under their heavy boots. They fought here, Alex said quietly. They fought hard right up to the end. Why didn't they retreat? Dan asked, picking up a bent rifle. They could have run to the escape pods. Look at the door, Tom said. At the end of the hall stood the bridge door. It was a massive slab of reinforced steel. It wasn't just locked. It had been welded shut from the inside. Melted metal ran down the seams like frozen tears. The crew of this ship didn't just lock the door. They fused it so nothing could get in and nothing could get out. Lisa, Alex said, can we cut through that? Lisa walked up to the door and scanned it. The metal is dense. It will take time. And the heat. It might damage whatever is on the other side. We don't have a choice, Alex said. Tom, set up the cutter. While Tom prepared his heavy plasma cutter, the others stood guard. The silence of the ship felt heavy now. It felt like a memory. Back on the Wanderer, Soa and Karg were watching the video feed with bated breath. The welding, Karg said, his eyes wide. It is a seal. A quarantine seal. But why? Soa asked. Why trap yourself? To protect the rest of the universe, Karg said grimly. Whatever is in that ship, they decided it was better to die than let it escape. Tom fired up the cutter. A bright blue flame shot out, roaring like a dragon. He began to slice through the thick steel door. It was slow work. Sparks rained down on the floor, bouncing off the bullet casings. The smell of ozone and burning metal filled the air. It took nearly an hour. The humans were sweating inside their suits, their muscles aching from the strain of the gravity and the tension. Finally, with a loud groan, the cut section of the door fell inward, hitting the floor with a heavy thud. Smoke curled out of the opening. Alex waved his hand to clear it. Lights on. They turned on their suit lamps and stepped onto the bridge of the Ara's Vanguard. It was a large room, circular in shape. Consoles and screens lined the walls, all dark and dead. In the center of the room was the captain's chair. But the most striking thing was the occupants. There were bodies. 5 of them. They sat in their chairs, slumped over the controls. They weren't aliens. They were humans. The salvage team walked slowly through the bridge. It felt like a holy place, or a cursed one. The bodies were mummified, their skin dried and pulled tight over their bones. Their uniforms were tattered, but the patches were still visible. Alex walked up to the captain. He reached out and gently touched the name tag on the chest. Captain Miller, he read aloud. He looked at the others. Commander Rodriguez. Ensign Smith. They were all human. Lisa went to the main engineering console. I can try to boot the backup power. There might be enough juice in the emergency cells to read the logs. Do it, Alex said. Lisa worked her magic. She connected her portable battery pack to the console. Sparks flew and the screens flickered to life. They glowed with a weak amber light. The ship hummed, a low, dying breath. Accessing the final log, Lisa said. Play it. A voice filled the room. It was distorted by static, but it was clear enough. It was the voice of Captain Miller. Asterisk. Log entry 445. This is Captain Miller. We have failed the mission, but we have succeeded in the duty. Asterisk. The voice sounded tired, but calm. Not panic. Asterisk. The organism got into the ventilation system 3 days ago. It's fast. It adapts. We lost the lower decks. We lost the engine room. My crew. My family. They are fighting in the halls, so I can record this. Asterisk. Alex looked at the bodies of the crew. They had died at their posts, not running. Asterisk. We realized what this thing is. It's not just a disease. It's a predator. A biological weapon made to kill everything. If it gets out, it won't just kill us. It will kill the galaxy. It eats biomass. It uses DNA to make itself stronger. Asterisk. There was a pause in the recording. A sound of gunfire could be heard in the background. Asterisk. We have made a decision. We cannot let this ship drift. We cannot let anyone board it and accidentally carry the spores away. We are going to seal the bridge. We are going to overload the reactor core in 10 minutes. We will vaporize the ship and the monster with it. Asterisk. Dan looked up, fear in his eyes. But they didn't blow up. The ship is still here. The overload failed, the voice continued. Sadder now. Asterisk. The virus got into the computer. It stopped the countdown. We are trapped. We are fighting the final wave now. They are at the door. I can hear them scratching. Asterisk. The sound of metal screeching echoed on the recording, making the hair on the back of Tom's neck stand up. Asterisk. This is Captain Miller, signing off. To anyone who finds this, do not open the door. Do not come in. Destroy us from afar. We are the Ares Vanguard. We hold the line. Asterisk. The log ended. The silence that followed was deafening. They tried to blow themselves up to save everyone else, Lisa whispered. She wiped a tear from her eye. They died alone in the dark, just to keep us safe. They were heroes, Tom said, his voice rough. Real heroes. Alex stood straighter. He looked at the dead captain. They didn't want us to open the door. But we are here now. And the threat is still here. He looked at the monitor Lisa was working on. Can you bring up the internal sensors? I want to see where that thing is. Lisa typed a command. The main screen shifted. It showed a schematic of the ship. Most of it was red, indicating biohazard. But there was one section, deep in the lower cargo hold, that was pulsing. The reactor, Lisa said. The organism is nesting near the reactor. It's feeding on the radiation. Is the containment field holding? Alex asked. No, Lisa said, her face pale. It's failing. The power is dying. The field is going to collapse in a few hours. And when it does, Whatever is down there wakes up, Tom finished. And it eats its way out, Alex said. He turned to his team. We can't leave. If we leave, the ship breaks apart, and that thing escapes into the sector. So what do we do? Dan asked. We can't blow it up. We don't have the codes. Alex looked at the captain's body, then at the welding on the door. They held the line, Alex said. Now it's our turn. We aren't salvaging tech anymore. We're on a pest control mission. He checked his weapon. We go to the reactor. We find the nest. And we burn it out. The aliens on the Wanderer were screaming in the background, warning them to run, warning them of the danger. But the humans didn't listen. They just reloaded their guns. They were scared, yes, but they were also angry. No one kills a crew of humans and gets away with it. Not on their watch. Let's go hunting, Alex said. The bridge felt colder after the recording ended. The story of Captain Miller and his crew hung in the air like a heavy fog. Alex looked at his team. Tom was checking his ammo clip, his jaw set tight. Lisa was typing rapidly on her console, her face pale. Dan was looking at the dead bodies with a mix of sadness and fear. We have a job to do, Alex said, breaking the silence. We can't let Captain Miller's sacrifice be for nothing. If that thing gets out, it will kill everyone in this sector. You want to go down there? Dan asked, his voice shaking slightly. Into the nest? We don't have a choice, Tom said, slapping a fresh clip into his rifle. The containment field is failing. If we run, the monsters escape. We stay, we fight, and maybe we die. But we take them with us. Lisa, Alex said, is there a way to reset the containment field from the reactor room? Lisa nodded. Yes, if I can manually route the power from the backup generators, I can hold the field for another hour. But that won't kill them. It will just trap them. Trapping them is step 1, Alex said. Step 2 is blowing this ship. Tom, do you still have those explosive charges from the airlock? Tom patted his backpack. I have enough to crack the reactor core open. If we overload it, the whole ship goes up. Then that's the plan, Alex said. We move to the lower deck. We secure the reactor. We set the charges. And we get out before the fireworks start. They moved out of the B. Ridge with a new sense of purpose. They weren't scavengers anymore. They were soldiers, carrying on the fight of the dead crew. They ran back through the maintenance tunnels, heading down toward the bottom of the ship. As they descended, the ship changed. The air became thicker, harder to breathe. The walls were covered in the gray, stone-like substance they had seen near the hatch. It was everywhere now, coating the metal like a mold. In some places, it pulsed with a faint bioluminescent blue light. My scanner is going crazy, Lisa warned. Fire signs are everywhere. They are small, hiding in the walls. Keep your eyes open, Alex whispered. They reached the bottom level. The gravity here was even heavier. Their suits whined under the strain, moving their legs for them. Every step was an effort. The corridor leading to the reactor room was blocked by a mass of the gray growth, hard as rock. Dan, blast it, Alex ordered. Dan raised his rifle and fired a grenade. It exploded against the gray wall, shattering the stone-like shell. Chunks of debris flew everywhere. Behind the broken wall, the darkness moved. From the shadows, shapes emerged. They were not human. They were twisted, nightmarish creatures. They looked like tall insects made of black chitin and muscle. They had long claws and multiple eyes that glowed red. They hissed, a sound like steam escaping a valve. Hold the line. Alex shouted. The creatures screamed and charged. The battle was chaotic and loud. The air filled with the smell of ozone and burning flesh. The humans stood back to back in a circle, firing their weapons. Tom's heavy gun tore through the creatures, blowing limbs off. But for every one that fell, 2 more seemed to crawl out of the walls. They were fast, faster than humans. But the humans had armor and weapons. One creature leaped at Dan, its claws aiming for his throat. Dan didn't have time to shoot. He threw his arm up to block. The claws slashed through his armored sleeve, cutting deep into his forearm. Dan yelled in pain. "Dan!" Lisa screamed. She swung her gun around and blew the creature's head off. She grabbed Dan and pulled him back into the circle. Blood was seeping through his suit. "I'm okay. I'm okay," Dan yelled, clutching his arm. "It just grazed me." "Tom, cover the left," Alex commanded. "We have to push forward. We can't stay here." They moved slowly, fighting every inch of the way. The creatures were relentless. They didn't feel fear. They didn't feel pain. They just wanted to eat. They reached the heavy door of the reactor room. It was covered in the gray slime, but the door mechanism still worked. "Lisa, get the door," Alex shouted, firing his pistol at a creature that was trying to climb on the ceiling. Lisa ran to the control panel. Her hands were shaking, but she typed fast. "Access denied. The system is locked down by the biomass." "Override it," Tom yelled. He threw a grenade down the hallway, blowing back a wave of monsters. "Hurry!" "I'm trying," Lisa cried. A creature broke through the line and lunged at Lisa. Tom tackled it, knocking it to the ground. He wrestled with the monster, his strength against its many limbs. With a roar of effort, Tom snapped its neck. He stood up, breathless, and wiped black blood from his visor. "Lisa now," Tom urged. She smashed her keypad with her fist. "Open!" The blast doors groaned and slid open. The team fell backwards into the reactor room. Tom and Dan fired their last grenades at the doorway, creating a wall of smoke and fire to slow the monsters down. Alex hit the close button. The doors slammed shut, shaking the floor. For a moment, it was quiet. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the 4 humans. They were inside the reactor room. It was a massive, circular chamber. In the center stood the reactor core, a towering pillar of glowing blue energy. But the core was dark. It was barely humming. Thick cables of the gray biomass were wrapped around it, squeezing it, draining its power. "It's eating the energy," Lisa said, horror in her voice. "That's how it grows." "Lisa, get to the main console," Alex said, pointing to a station on a raised platform. "Reroute the power. Lock down the containment field." Lisa ran to the console. She started typing immediately. "Tom, Dan, start placing the charges," Alex ordered. "We put them on the support columns. When this thing blows, it takes everything." Tom and Dan moved to the columns. Dan was holding his injured arm, his face pale with pain, but he didn't complain. He used his good hand to stick the explosive packs onto the metal. Alex stood in the middle of the room, watching the door. He knew it wouldn't hold. The creatures were strong. They were scratching at the metal, screeching. "How long, Lisa?" Alex asked. 5 minutes. She shouted back. "Tom, status?" "Charges set," Tom said. "But I need to arm them. That takes 2 minutes. Do it." Suddenly, the reactor room lights turned red. An alarm began to blare. A computer voice spoke over the intercom. Asterisk, warning. Containment breach. Hull integrity critical. Asterisk, what's happening? Dan yelled. "The biomass is too heavy," Lisa said. "The structural supports are failing." The floor beneath them cracked. A thick tentacle of gray slime shot up from the ground. It whipped through the air and smashed into Tom. He flew across the room and hit the wall hard. He slid down, not moving. "Tom!" Alex screamed. He fired at the tentacle, slicing it in half. It writhed on the ground, black blood spraying. Another tentacle lashed out, wrapping around Dan's legs. It yanked him up into the air, upside down. Dan dropped his explosives. "Help me!" Dan screamed. Alex ran forward, slicing the tentacle with his knife. Dan fell to the ground. He scrambled away, grabbing his explosive detonator. "We have to go now," Lisa yelled. "The field is collapsing." The huge door to the room began to dent inward. The creatures were ramming it. "Tom is down," Alex shouted. He ran to his friend. Tom was unconscious, his leg bent at a weird angle. Alex grabbed Tom by the straps of his armor and started dragging him toward the exit. It was incredibly heavy. The gravity made it feel like Tom weighed a ton. "Lisa, on the charges," Alex yelled, straining under the weight. "I can't," Lisa cried. "The remote signal is blocked by the biomass. Someone has to stay behind to push the manual button." The door buckled. A claw punched through the steel. "No," Dan said. He looked at the manual override on the main console. It was a red button under a glass case. "I'll do it." "Dan, no," Alex said, still dragging Tom. "Get to the door." "There's no time," Dan said. He looked at Alex, then at Tom. "Take him. Get out of here. Dan." "Go, Captain." "That's an order." Dan stood by the console. He raised his weapon and fired at the creatures as they broke through the door. He was buying them time. Alex looked at Dan one last time. He saw the fear in the young man's eyes, but he also saw resolve. Alex nodded. He grabbed Tom with both hands and heaved him toward the small maintenance exit at the back of the room. Lisa was already there, holding the door open. "Go! Go!" she screamed. Alex threw Tom through the door and jumped in after him. Lisa slammed the heavy hatch shut and spun the wheel lock. Outside, in the reactor room, Dan stood alone. He could hear the creatures swarming into the room. He looked at the red button under the glass. "Captain Miller," Dan whispered. "I'm with you." He smashed the glass and pressed the button. The explosion was silent in the vacuum of space, but the light was blinding. A shock wave of pure energy ripped through the lower decks of the RS Vanguard. It vaporized the reactor room instantly. It vaporized the monsters. It vaporized Dan. On the salvage ship, the hull rocked violently. "What happened?" Sola screamed, holding onto the console. "They did it," Karg whispered, watching the sensors. "They destroyed the nest." But the ship wasn't destroyed. The explosion had only taken out the bottom section. The Ares Vanguard was still there, broken, but floating. "Alex?" Sola spoke into the radio. "Alex, come in." Static filled the speaker for a long, agonizing minute. Then, a weak voice broke through. "Alex here. We're alive. Tom is hurt bad. We're coming home." The aliens slumped in their chairs, relieved. They had watched humans walk into hell. And somehow, impossibly, 3 of them had walked back out. But they knew they had paid a high price. They weren't just scavengers anymore. They were legends. The silence that followed the explosion was louder than the blast itself. Inside the small maintenance tunnel, the 3 survivors sat in the darkness. Their heavy breathing was the only sound. Alex leaned against the cold metal wall, wiping sweat and grime from his forehead. Lisa was crying quietly, her face buried in her hands. Tom was unconscious, his leg twisted at a strange angle, but he was alive. "He did it," Lisa whispered between sobs. "Dan saved us." Alex nodded slowly. He felt a heavy weight in his chest, not from the gravity, but from the loss. "Yeah, he did. He was a brave kid." "We have to move," Alex said, his voice hardening. He stood up, fighting the urge to just sit and give up. "Dan didn't die so we could just sit here in the dark." We need to get back to the Wanderer. What about the ship? Lisa asked, looking up with red eyes. Is the monster gone? The explosion took out the reactor room, Alex said. But the ship is still here. We need to make sure nothing else survives. He helped Lisa stand up. Then they lifted Tom. It was incredibly difficult. The gravity was punishing, and Tom was a big man. They dragged him between them, his boots scraping the floor. They moved slowly, painfully back the way they came. The ship felt different now. The gray biomass that had covered the walls was burnt and blackened. The creatures were gone. The explosion had killed the nest and everything connected to it.